Last week we teased our PS5 heatsink and you guys absolutely loved it, and in today's video we'll be answering some of your questions and announcing our pre-order. Hello everyone, my name's Mike and here at Sabrent we talk about tech and tech related videos, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you stay updated. If you don't know, PlayStation will soon be releasing a new software update where you can expand the built-in SSD storage so that you can store more PS5 games and run it off directly from the SSD. You can have early access to this software by registering for the beta, but Sony doesn't accept all applications and it can take a few weeks before you can be accepted, and that's if you are accepted. So in this video I'm going to answer a few questions that we saw from our community, as well as how we came up with the idea in the first place. So don't worry, there will be more videos on this heatsink coming soon. So first of all, the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus doesn't replace the SSD inside your PS5, but expands the storage via Sony's purpose-built SSD expansion slot. This isn't a hack or a modification, it's just a relatively easy upgrade. The reason you would want to expand the SSD internally rather than running an external SSD via the USB port is because you cannot run PS5 games directly from USB drives, but you can run PS4 games from them. Some have also asked if you should even run a heatsink at all, and if you could get away with not having one. And look, we're not here to tell you what to do, but we strongly advise you use a heatsink. Even Sony themselves have made this recommendation and we agree from our own tests. If you have an SSD with a built-in heatsink, this must be removed. You cannot install two heatsinks with our Sabrent PS5 heatsink. This may sound obvious to you, but we did have a few of you ask this. Some of you also asked why we made the heatsink in this manner instead of maybe taking one of our current heatsink designs and just shrinking it down to fit the PS5. And I mean, it makes sense because this is one of the best heatsinks out there for your PC, outperforming pretty much all built-in and motherboard NVMe heatsinks. So it does make sense, but you have to look at the whole package, and we did take a look at the whole package. This isn't a PC, it's a PS5. We tested the internal temperature of the expansion slot with and without the SSD and with gaming loads, and we found a few very interesting things. Now, unfortunately, the testing tools on the PS5 is almost non-existent, so there was no way of using the PS5 software to get the temperatures for the different components, hence why we ended up using many temperature probes and as many temperature tools as we could to get as accurate data as we could. Firstly, the PS5 expansion slot is meant to use negative pressure via two very small chambers to cool the SSD slot. We actually found that depending on the ambient temperature, even without an SSD installed and just gaming, this slot was between 8 to 10 degrees Celsius hotter than the ambient. You can even run this test at home with a simple temperature probe. So after running many tests, and even here at the studio, I did it with my own equipment, it was kind of clear to see that negative pressure wasn't the most ideal method of cooling. Then we took a look at the main workloads that the SSD would be doing 90% of the time, as this is going to be a different kind of workload compared to PCs, which again has to be taken into account when designing something like this. The PS5 is mainly doing read operations, which for those of you who don't know will generate less heat than write operations. And the main write operations on the PS5 that you will be doing will be when you're downloading and installing games, which is a fraction of the PS5 workload. On an SSD, you have a few main components, but the component that gets the hottest is the controller, which is located on the top of the SSD. Then the rest of the board will be filled with NAND storage and DRAM and whatnot. Depending on the amount of storage you have, you may have NAND storage on both the top and the bottom of the SSD. Now, looking at the PS5 itself, on the motherboard where the PS5 has the NAND chips, there is actually no heatsink or active cooling, which further cemented our theory that the NAND doesn't get hot enough whereby you need additional cooling after long periods of gaming sessions. Again, read operations don't generate as much heat as write operations. This means that cooling the controller on the NVMe SSD is more important than cooling the NAND. And it's worth also mentioning here that NAND doesn't need to be cooled in the same way that the controller does, because NAND actually likes to be run slightly hotter than the controller. So if you even cool the SSD too much, you can actually run into issues. And there's even I think a great video by Tech Quickie that explains SSD cooling if you want to know more. Also, the PS5 is a mass consumer device. For some users, they are already nervous about taking off the lid and doing this upgrade, and we don't want users to go through the whole building a heatsink around the SSD with a whole bunch of these tiny little screws, and even with some heatsinks with elastic bands, which again is not a good way of mounting a heatsink, which I've seen on the market. So to combat the thermal issues and to make the installation process easier, after a few iterations and a lot of tweaking, we of course came up with this design, and it works great. So if you didn't watch our first video on this, the PS5 heatsink replaces the metal cover. You cannot install both. The heatsink uses our sandwich design so that, like our SSD enclosures, ensures a good pressure on the SSD for optimal heat transfer. Now, the thermal pad used is reusable and easy to remove and install if you choose to upgrade the storage or to remove the SSD entirely. The whole process is easy. The thermal pad sits in between the heatsink and the SSD for even contact. Because the entire heatsink replaces the top metal cover rather than solely using the negative pressure method to cool the SSD, we end up utilizing the PS5 cooling fan to basically having active airflow over the heatsink itself. This means lower temperatures and obviously a more elegant cooling solution. This also means wider compatibility with other SSDs, and of course, we recommend using the Rocket 4 Plus for your SSD. The installation process is really simple and easy to do, making this more approachable for doing this upgrade to even the most nervous beginner. We think that we've created a great heatsink that overcomes some of the flaws of the PS5 cooling SSD method and have made the installation process far easier and more approachable than many other heatsinks out there on the market. Now, if you want to pick up our heatsink, we have opened up pre-orders because so many of you requested this, and honestly, we were overwhelmed with the huge positive response of our teaser video on this heatsink. I have left a link down in the description below to where you can pre-order one if you want to grab one right now. We will also have more content on this as PlayStation roll out their final release of the software, so make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. But that's it for today. If you found this video interesting and you enjoyed our video, then please make sure to hit that like button and also hit that subscribe button and notification bell to watch more content like this. Anyway, look after yourselves and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.